You're listening to
Hope FM.
The Sound.
103. Connecting communities.
E re fela sentse ke boela go dumedisa wena mmamedi wa tshebeletswana ya mantlhelenyo la fela Hope FM o dumediswa ke ena Bongani Shusha Bino Mthimkhulu tsatsi lena la kajeno ele manta bekeng tsatsi lena la kajeno ke tsona tsena tsa yona fela Freedom Day wena mmamedi wa ka jwale ne sentse ke mema baithuti kaofela ba grade 12 tsatsi lena la kajeno re tla be sentse re tlo shebana le ona Maths Lit ke tsona tse tla be sentse re tlo shebana le tsona tsatsi lena la kajeno rena le meniere LGP Matitoane ke ena tla be sentse a re fa tsona tsena tsatsi lona lena la kajeno ke sa senye le nako ke a tshepa gore ma grade 12 kaofela baithuti ke tshepa gore le sentse le tshwere di calculator tsa lona le sentse le tshwere le di notebook tsa lona hobane re tlo etsa metse tsatsi lona lena la kajeno ke tlantle go senya le nako ke tla be sentse fela ke dumedisa meniere ke tlwella dithapo ka ho yena ntate wa ka dumela
ntate Mthimkhulu dumela le ba mamedi ba Hope FM kaofela a tswadi le bana ba sekolo di colleagues ke a le dumedisa hape tsena ka jeko
sentse o ikutlwetse he wena mamedi wa ka sentse re kena tabeng meniere ke nana gore fela re ska senya nako re hlenne re kene o tsona meniere
ha re wele ditabeng tate
thank you meniere
ke a dumedisa hape ke a le amohela hape session ena ya Maths Lit mo ke tlo qala ke qetella topics tsa finance re tlo bua ka di different tariff systems and be qetella probability ke qetella last week a little bit so that re tsebo qala ka other topics. I think today ke tlo ba as brief as possible, as much as information ke la fanyona I hope re tla gona o grasp everything e ke le fanyona santse ke nkana go ena ke le dumedisa hape e re ke start immediately. Now remember that learners, we have two types of tariffs, whether it can be tariff from municipality bills or tariffs from a cell phone bill, or it doesn't matter, but actually we categorize that tariffs in one category, in one basket. And the second tariffs that we have is the water tariffs that is being calculated differently. Now I'm going to start with the first tariffs where we're going to look at electricity and cell phones contract and cell phone prepaids. That is the first tariffs that I'm going to look at. Now remember, basically the calculations are the same. That's why I put them together in one basket. And secondly, they will only differ when it comes to the specific conditions, which I'll mention later. But in grade 10, if we can remind ourselves in grade 10, one of the basic skills that we learn in grade 10, the proportions. Now remember, it's very important for you to remember these basic skills, because as we are dealing with this, it's very important to realize that it affects our tariffs in what manner. Now remember, we have three types of proportions, and immediately you talk about this proportion, I want you already to put the graphs in mind, because in these tariffs, our graphs, we only have three types of graphs. So you master this, you already know how to draw your graph, even though you have not drawn the graph yet or plotted the points. You will know that whether your graph is correct before you even answer the question, because you understand the basic behind the proportions. Now, remember, another word that they can use for proportion is a relationship that you can use. Actually, it's one and the same thing, because we are going to find the relationship between two or more variables. So that means basically proportions and relationships. The question people can say, what relationship is being shown in the graph, or what type of proportion is this, is basically one and the same answer to a question. Now the first proportion that I'm going to look at, and that I want us to go more deeper, because in most of the cases paper one to rely on this type of proportion, which is a direct proportion or direct relationship. A direct relationship or direct proportion. Now this type of proportion, if we look at the two variables, now when I'm talking about the variables, we're talking about a dependent variable and independent variable. Remember that in our axis, when we draw our graphs, we draw only two graphs, and it's nice because in Maths Lit, it's already been drawn, the graph into the table. You just need to plot the graph. Now remember that on the lower part, that means on the floor part of your table, you must remember those are independent variables always. it's most important that you must remember on the lower part, we call it the independent variable. The part that is going up and down on your left hand side of the table is called the dependent variable. That means it depends on what is happening downwards there on your table. Now, this direct proportion, if we compare these two types of relationship, that means we are saying that the dependent variable and independent variables, both of them, they are increasing or decreasing. But in most of the cases, you will find that they are both increasing variables. That means if I have 1, there I will have 2, 4. If you see that both variables, they are increasing instead of going down, both of them, they are going up, then that means we say both variables increases. In most of the cases, they increase with the same rate. In most of the cases, they increase with the same rate. But it's very rare that you find that they do not increase with the same rate, but we'll deal with that later on. Now, this type of graph, even before you draw, you must know that you are going to find a linear graph. That means a straight line graph going somewhere up there in between your direct and indirect proportion. So that means if you find a straight line graph, we call it a linear proportion. Or a direct, it's another word for direct proportion. You can use either of the word, a linear or a direct. But if it's from a straight line, it's a linear graph. But the type of relationship, it's a direct relationship. So that is where we have to draw the lines, that we know the graph itself is a linear proportion, but the relationship is a direct relationship. Actually, we keep on repeating one and the same thing because it's saying one thing in another way. But once you remove the independent variables and the dependent variables, they both increases. So we have a direct relationship. Now, secondly, what we have to realize on the graph, there are two things. The linear graph may start from 0. That means that it may start where your joints start. If it starts from 0, it simply means that your graph does not have a base fee. That's why your graph will start at 0. But if it has a base fee, it will start exactly on that base fee. But it will not start somewhere in the middle, because most of the mistake that I saw the learners doing, they just start the graph in the middle of nowhere. You start exactly on the line of the dependent variable. That is where we started. Exactly on the line of the dependent variable, we find that basic fee. Where is it? Then we draw until we start drawing our graph there. It will also show that it's a straight line, it's a linear graph. There's no difference. The only difference is that the other one has a basic fee, the other one does not have a basic fee. Now, these two, they may ask you to find the formula. Remember that even though you are given the graph, or you may draw the graph, you must always be able to identify what type of the tariff system they have used. If it has no basic fee, the total cost of that, if I have to find the graph, the formula for the graph that does not have a basic fee, the total cost, it will be the rate itself. Now remember, the rate consists of two things. It must be rent per liter, rent per minutes, or rents per seconds, or unit per minute, whatever. But it must, when you're talking about the rate, it must be two things. Now, for example, when you use a cell phone in a prepaid system, that is where we use this based into a system, with this tariff system that does not have a basic fee, a prepaid system. Now, if I buy airtime, now Vodacom, Celsi, Telecom, and any other network provider, they will give you different rate systems. Now, I'll give you the one that I'm using currently as an example. Not that I'm promoting it, it's just that I know that one for now. Telecom, for instance, is charged me R1.05 per minute. Now, immediately you see that R1.05 per minute is tell you that itself is a tariff, or is the cost of using that tariffs in that cell phone. So that means if I use 5 minutes, I want to know how much am I going to be charged if I use 5 minutes, for example. Now the total cost, if I write it, I'll say I'll write the total cost equals to R1.05 Per minutes means multiply by number of minutes. Remember, when you write the formula, you write those values. They are very important, because if you don't write it, we don't give you the mark. We only give you mark for just into 1 mark, just knowing how into that the tariff is actually how you are going to find the formula, or how we are going to use to calculate what is being asked. So that means in this case it will be 1 rand 5 cents multiplied by 5. In the number of minutes there are 5. So I just put that in the calculator as it is, 1 rand 5 cents multiplied by 5. Remember that 1 rand 5 cents is 1,05. It's not 1,50. So those are two different things. Now in this one it will cost me 5 rand 25 cents. So that means for 5 minutes I'll be paying 5 rand 25 cents per in a prepaid system. But if I use a contract, which of most of the people that are working, they like using this contract, but they are not aware of the clause behind this contract, the contract systems. They give you 3 minutes, but those 3 minutes are there minutes that are being given there, and that hour my sorry. Are these minutes that are being given, is it the peak or off-peak minutes? It's very important, because now we have this tendency when we have a contract cell phone, we just phone anytime we need. But in actual sense, they will give you the off-peak minutes. What does it mean, the peak and off-peak minutes? Remember, when we say it's a peak minute, is that time where everyone is busy using the cell phone, especially the business part of the world, the economic part of the world. They're using cell phone. Is where we are waking. Now, it start around 7 o'clock in the morning, and it ends around 59 minutes to past 7 in the evening. That's why in the evening, during the week, you find out you are paying less after 8 o'clock, because after 8 o'clock during the week, it's off-peak minutes. So that means you are paying less than during the peak time. The peak time you are paying more, off-peak you are paying less. So, sorry. Now, during off-peak minutes, that means when you are using a contract, during off-peak minutes, you are just using 3 minutes. You can call as much as you want. But if you call during peak minutes, that means you are going to charge you a certain fee beside the base fee they are going to charge you. Let's say you are taking a contract of 159 rand per month. That one is a fixed one. That means you will need to pay, whether you lost a cell phone, you will still need to pay that 159 rand per month for the period of the contract that you are having. Most of the cases, the period of the contract is about 24 months. That means you are that 159, you are going to pay it for 24 months until you finish the contract. So that one is a must pay. That means it's a fixed. It's not tentable. That means you have to pay that one. Whether you don't have a cell phone anymore, whether they stole your cell phone, whether you didn't have insurance or you have, you will pay that 159, the period of 24 months according to your contract. But there are charges that they're going to charge you if you use outside the minutes that being given. Let's say, example, they are charging you 75 cents per minute. Thereafter, they give you 100 free minutes of peak minutes. Because they will be very specific. Remember again, off peak during holiday, public holiday, it's off peak. That means today is a freedom day. You can use a cell phone any time of the day. You are still going to pay the same amount that you are paying after 8 o'clock is the same. During the weekend also, you are going to, it's off peak. The whole weekend, the whole Saturday and the whole Sunday, it's off peak minutes. So it's the same thing. So now, peak minutes are only from a Monday to Friday, from 7 o'clock in the morning until just a minute after, a minute before 8 o'clock. Then it's an off-peak minute. Now, in this example, the total cost, it will be different. Let's calculate the total cost of using 5 minutes after you have reached all the maximum. It doesn't matter whether it's off-peak or during peak time. After you have used the maximum, into the maximum minutes, they say you must calculate 5 minutes as you have used extra. So the total cost this time, you specify, you don't write the fixed charge. You write the amount, because the mark to write that amount, 159, is very important. then you add it to the rate. It's not that one is only the rate, but that fixed charge, you add it to the rate, which is, in this case, 75 cents times number of minutes. You write that. Remember that 75 cents is 0.75, then you include that. Now, when I calculate this, it's 159 plus 0.75 times 5 minutes after I've used my 3 minutes of 150 minutes. So I put this in the calculator, 159 plus 0.75 times 5 minutes. In this case, for using extra 5 minutes, I'll pay 162 rand 75 cents because I have a base fee of 159 rand per month. So that's the difference. Remember that the graph of this prepaid, it will start at 0. The graph of a contract, it will start exactly at the base fee, and base fee differ from a contract to another contract. Remember that even when you have a business, you are going to pay a fixed charge for renting. That's only for rent. Your expenses for the business that besides that. So also the expenses, the variable expenses, we are taking those variable expenses as the rate itself. Then the money for rent is a fixed charge. So that means every time there will always be those difference for a direct proportion. Now, if we go to indirect proportion, which is the second proportion. So if I have indirect proportion, now what does indirect mean? We still have going to have the sale graph table. Now it will always start at 0 also, but indirect, you have two types of indirect, which is a linear indirect and a non-linear indirect. A linear indirect, remember that we said the linear is when it forms a straight line. But now it's indirect. How does it form an indirect when it's a linear? Now, when it's a linear and it's indirect, we are simply says both variables, when the other one increases, the other one decreases. That means now we have indirect. They're not increasing this time. The other one is increasing, the other one is decreasing, or vice versa. Now, indirect linear, in most of the case, it will start from a dependent variable at 0, exactly on the line of the dependent variable, and it will end at exactly the line of independent variable. Then it will form a straight line. Why does it form a straight line? What does it tell you about that? It tells you that it decreases with the same rate. That's why it gives that into a linear graph. It decreases with the same rate. That is one of the reasons that you can ask you the question, why do you say this into why this graph forms a straight line? Is because it decreases with the same rate. The other one, it can be a non-linear, which will give you a C-curve graph. You will see that in most of the case it forms a C-curve. So it starts from the dependent variable to independent variable forming that C part. Then that one, it does not decrease with the same rate. It does not decrease with the same rate. That's why we have those two graphs. Now, remember also again, these two graphs, linear and non-linear, they can ask you why it starts, how much it costs, maybe. Remember that where your dependent variable starts, that's the cost of your tariffs. Now, in this example, in most of the cases, they won't require you to find a formula to calculate the total cost. But if they may ask, remember that you may be given the total cost of maybe 300 rand. They say the total cost was 300 rand, and the base fee maybe, if you say the base fee, then they give you 100 rand is the base fee. Then they say that in that 300 rand, we are talking about the prepaid system, you used 1 rand 50 per minute. So they want you to find that how many minutes did you use in order for you to be able to pay 300 rand. So we are going to write our formula as it is, like the direct proportion. The total cost is going to be equals to the base fee, which is 100 rand in this example, plus 1 rand 50 times number of minutes. you write the formula as it is before you substitute, because if you understand the formula, it's easy for you to find the correct answer. So that means the total cost, you are given that it was 300 rand. The total cost is given, which is 300 rand, equals to the 100 rand you did not substitute because it's already substituted. 150 times number of minutes. Now, first things first. Remember that if we are given to, if we are given to, we are to find the formula, we are going to say both must start multiplying before you add. But this time we need number of minutes. That means we need to start taking out from the back. If there was minus, we are going to transpose minus, but we don't have minus here. We have only addition. That means we are going to transpose addition first before multiplication. Now, if we transpose that 100 rand to another side, that means that 100 rand immediately it jumps that equal sign. It's no longer addition, it becomes subtraction. So that means 300 minus 100 rand. That means in the other side we are left with 150 times number of minutes. So we take a calculator, 300 minus 100 is 200, equals to 150 times number of minutes. Now we need number of minutes, we don't need 150. But that 150, we are multiplying it. We need to remove that 150. So that 150, how do we remove it? Because we are multiplying it, we're doing the inverse of it, which is division. So that means we are going to divide by 150 both sides. Not subtracting this time, we are dividing it. So in the left to right hand side, 150 is going to cancel 150. Then we are left with number of minutes. So that means we have 200 divided by 150, then we are left to have 133,333. So that means these are number of minutes, that's 133. So 133,33 minutes, it will cost you 300 rand. That is what the question was required. Now, let me do the last proportion, which is the constant proportion. Now, this constant proportion, remember that it doesn't matter to which one of the variables is constant, but one of the variables need to be constant, whereas the other one increases or decreases. Now, we can have a constant dependent variable. Dependent, remember, is from up and down. That's the dependent variable. Independent is from left to right. Those are the independent variables. So if we have the dependent variable being constant, now this independent variable, it keeps on increasing, but the dependent variable remains the same. That means we'll get the straight line. Let me say the dependent was 100 rand there. So it will, if it's 0, it will be 100 rand. If it is 1, the independent variable is 1, it's 100 rand. The dependent variable is 2, then it's still 100 rand. That means it's constant relationship. Or we can have also independent variable constant. That means at 1. Maybe number is 1, then the dependent variable, it keeps on increasing. So that means at 1 it becomes 1, 2, it's still 1, then the dependent becomes 2, it's still 1, it becomes 3, for example. So that means we can have a straight line going from left to right, or a straight line going from top to bottom to top. Then you must know that if you have a straight line like that, just going up and down or left to right, not the same as that one that is inclining. It's not the same. Remember that direct one is actually inclining. It's not going to the dependent or independent variable, but it's inclining. It's going between them. It's going to from 0 upwards, straight up, so that it gives it does not go to independent or dependent variable. It's just going between them. Then that is inclining. But if it's going straight, you will see that it just goes straight with the dependent into dependent or independent variable. Then you know that is a constant proportion. It's not the same as those other two. So I have a question paper here with me that was asked also last year November in our final examination for our matriculant, which is question 2.2. Now in this question, it was paper 1. In this question, we are already given the graph. Already you have to know how to interpret that graph. You already, by looking at a graph of what we have already I've already said, By looking at the graph, you should already know what type of proportion or what type of relationship is that graph before even the question is being asked, because there's a possibility that they may ask the question. Now the 2.2 says, Josh owns a special designed refuse removal truck. He hires out the truck at a daily rate of 3,000 excluding fuel. That means that 3,000, it basically says that it's a base fee because he hired it. That means the base fee is 3,000 rand. Excluding the fuel, that means other the variable cost, it's fuel and maybe paying other workers. We don't know, but we know that we have a base fee and other variable cost. A group of friends decide to use the truck for day to carry their refuse to nearby dumping grounds. The graph below indicates the amount each person will pay depending on the number of friends. The cost of hiring the truck. Now the dependent variable, that means from up to down, those dependent variables, is the cost per person in rent. That means already you see that the cost is the dependent variables in this case. That means you must know that immediately that you see the up and down in your graph, that's a dependent variable. Even though they even ask the question, by just interpreting your graph, knowing exactly what you have known from what you have studied. Now, secondly, they give us from left to right, 0 to 10. They give us number of persons. That means number of persons is independent variable. According to this graph, it's a C-shaped graph. Now, according to what we discussed, this is indirect proportion. And this type of indirect proportion, that means it does not decrease with the same rate. That's why it gives us a C-shaped graph. Now, 2.2.1. State the type of proportion represented by the graph. The type of proportion is indirect. This is only for 2 marks, just to say indirect. That's what they needed there. 2.2.2. Write down the number of friends in a group if each person paid 500. So we go to the graph. Here they just basically want us how to read your graph. You go to your graph. The cost there, your dependent variable. You point out where is your graph. Where is your 500 rand. Now, on my dependent variable, I have 0, 200, 400, 600. 500 is between 400 and 600. So remember that the question does not say calculate the number of persons. It says write down. You just read from the graph. Now, between 400 and 600, I go straight to the graph. Now, there I see the point there that exactly for 500 is 6 persons. You just write that. You don't need, it's 2 marks just to answer that. You don't need any calculation. Just interpret your graph. Now 2.2.3. Now they say calculate the amount each person will pay if 7 friends hired the truck. Now remember that you can read from the graph, but the question says calculate. Already from the graph, I can see that my amount is above 400 rand, but is less than 500 rand. That means I'm paying less. So remember that the base fee is 3,000 rand. So that means each and every friend will have to split that 3,000 rand amongst themselves. So it will be 3,000 divided by 7. Divide by 7. Then I get 428 rand 57 cents. So this one is correct because of what? You didn't read from the graph. You showed how did you calculate it. You don't just manipulate saying, but it's 400, it's close to, then you just guess 420. Then we just lose certain marks. Remember this one says calculate. The above one says how many to write down the number. You just write the number. But if they say calculate, you just calculate. I don't know if there are any further questions on what I have just given to the learners, or must I continue?
re fela ke ba hopotse dinomoro fela o ka romela potso tsa hao ho 0728390427 0728390427 ke tsona tseo tsa WhatsApp mo ka romelang dipotso tsohle tsona le tsona tsa menere tsatsing lena la kajeno mo ile re shebane le pampirena ya Maths Lit ka tswela pele menere.
Thank you, Madam. Now remember that even electricity, they can even also ask you in the same manner. It's just that we are talking about electricity. Remember, when we talk about electricity, we're talking about per unit instead of per minute or per second. So the only difference, it will be per unit. So that means if I buy 1 unit, how much will I pay? Even petrol, they can even ask you the same question. But remember, petrol is number of liters. That's the only difference that we are going to use there. So it's the same thing ultimately. But the second tariff that I want us now to check on is the water tariff, which is basically a far difference from what we are talking about. But also this is still a tariff. Now, a water tariff, you will be given a table also. And from one municipality to another municipality, it will differ depending how poor the community is. But make sure that you know how to calculate the usage of water. Now, the question paper that I have that was shared for us here by our fellow colleagues, it gives us the water tariffs. Pule has rented a room in Sidle's house while renovating his home into his house. Sidle and Pule agreed to share the water and electricity bill in the ratio of 2:3. Remember that your ratio is very important. Remember what we said last week about the ratio. We have 2:3. We don't have 1 now. How do you find 1? Simply by dividing with the smallest number between the two. But that one we'll deal with later on again. I'll try to touch up on that if I have time. Now, they also agreed to share the water levy. They used 39 kiloliters of water. It's important that to know how many kiloliters of water is being used, because for you to able to pay, to know how much you are paying for water, you need to know how much water have you used. So that means you can go to your water into a meter reading and read the number of kilometers, the difference, and find out how many kiloliters you used. You can go to municipality and find this water tariffs table. They will give it to you surely with no hesitation. For the month of April, remember that April has 30 days. It's also important when it comes to time, you must recall that April has how many days. Now, use the water tariffs below to answer the question that follow. Note the water levy payable per 10% of monthly water account. Now, water tariffs. Now we are giving into this table. The first is on the left, it says water usage. The second on the right, it says rate per kiloliter. Now, I know this is very confusing, but actually it's not confusing. All we need to do is to know how to interpret this table. Now, what I want you to do first is to look at your left-hand side of the table where they give you water usage. Now, for that water usage, I want you to find the difference between the number of kiloliters that being given there. Now, for example, in this one, they give him from 0 to 6 kiloliters. Now, from 0 to 60 kiloliters, I want you to write it vice versa. When I say find the difference, that means that the difference is subtracting the big minus the small. So when 6 minus 0, it will give you 6 kiloliters. That's what I want to do. Then 10, they give you above 6 kiloliters to 10 kiloliters. That means I want you to say 10 minus 6, it's 4 kiloliters. Then above 15 kiloliters to 20 kiloliters, I want you to say 20 minus 15, which is 5 kiloliters. Now 20 to 30, 30 minus 20, which is 10 kiloliters. Now above 30 to 40 kiloliters, 40 minus 30, which is another 10 kiloliters. Then the last one will say above 40 kiloliters, then does not have how much to where should it end. That means until infinity. If you reach more than above that, then that means you'll pay more into more. Now, but what does this difference has to do? Now remember that the number of kiloliters, that difference that you have calculated, that's 6, 4, 5, 10 and 10. Those number of kiloliters we are going to use them to split that 39s amongst it. So we must, when we are going to put 39 kiloliters among those numbers to see how much we are going to pay. Now the first kiloliters, we are saying that the maximum that you can pay on the first category is 6 kiloliters. On the second category, that means on the first category of free, you are going to pay 6 kiloliters for free. That means 6 kiloliters, you are going to pay 0 rent. So we multiply this by 0. That's what you are saying. Because the 6 kiloliters, remember, we have 39. In 39, we can take out 6. 6 it was free. That means what is left in 39 is 33. 6 was free, but the 3 you have to pay it. Now, how do you split the 3? Now we go to the next one, the next difference, which is 4. The maximum number of kiloliters that you can put on the next one for you to be able to pay 11.84 cents per kiloliter is 4 kiloliters. So that means in 33 I can find 4. So that means in 33 I can subtract 4. That's true. So for that 4 kiloliters, I'm going to pay 724 cents per kiloliter. That means multiply by 724 cents. So I'm going to know how much is left. So that means in the 3, if I subtract 4, I'm left with 29 kiloliters because I already took 6, I already took out 4. So I'm left with 29 kiloliters. Okay, I'm going to the next one because 29 kiloliters is not filled up yet. The next one says the difference gave me 5 kiloliters. In 29, I can find 5 kiloliters again. So that means that 5 kiloliters, I can pay 11.84 cents per kiloliter. So 29, I can subtract 5 kiloliters because I already know that I'm going to pay 11.45 into 84 cents per kiloliter. So if I take out 5, I'm going to be left with 24 kiloliters. Now I'm going to the second one because I still have number of kiloliters that is left, which is 10 kiloliters, the difference that I find for 30 to 20, which is 10 kiloliters. So 24, I can find 10 there. So I can take out 10 in 24. So that means for 10 kiloliters, yes, for all of it, I'm going to pay 23 rand 34 cents per kiloliter. So if I take out 10 out of 24, I'm left with 13 kiloliters. Then the last category says 10, but that's the last one. So I put all the remaining there, 14 kiloliters, I put it there, multiply by 14. I'm going to take out that. Oh, the last one says 10 kiloliters. I'm taking out 10, which is 25 rand 10 cents. So I'm going to left with 4 kiloliters. So that one, let's say above 40 kiloliters, you are paying 31 rand 16 cents per kiloliter. So that means I'm left with 4 kiloliters. I'm going to put only 4 kiloliters because that is the only thing that is left there. Then now I'm going to my calculator, multiplying everything throughout downwards. 6 multiplied by 0, which is 6 kiloliters, into 0 rand. Set into 4 multiplied by 7 rand 24 cents. That means for that category, I'm going to pay 28 rand 96 cents. 5 multiplied by 11 rand 84 cents. I'm going to have 59 rand 20 cents. Then I have 10 multiplied by 23 rand 34 cents. Then I'm going to pay 233 rand 40 cents. Then I have 10 multiplied by 25 rand 10 cents, which is 251 rand. Then I have 4 multiplied by 31 rand 16 cents, which is 124 rand 64 cents. Now, the total amount for 2.1, because they said calculate the amount payable by both families for using that 9 kiloliters, including levy. Now, the total amount before levy, it will be 28 rand, or you can start with 0 because anyway, anything plus 0 is still 0, and it's still that amount. So, plus 28 rand 96 cents, plus 59 rand 20 cents, plus 203 rand 40 cents. Plus 251 rand, plus 124 rand 64 cents. Remember to always double check your values that they correlate before adding them. Now 0 plus 28 rand 96 cents, plus 59 rand 20 cents, plus 233 rand 40 cents, plus 250 plus 124 rand 64 cents. So this is 697 rand 20 cent without levy. Remember that levy payable is 10% of their account. So we need to calculate the percentage of 697 cents. So we multiply by 10% to find the percentage of the levy first. So 697 rand 20 multiply by 10% of the levy, because it's stated clearly above there. If you don't include this levy, you are going to forfeit the mark. So the levy there is going to be 69 rand 72 cents. Then we add the total amount of the account, which is 697 rand 20. So the total amount payable to the account is 697 rand 20 plus 19 to 69 rand 72 cents. Then it gives me the total of 766 rand 92 cents. This is the amount including levy. Now, number two, Sihle claimed that he needed to pay the less than 300 for the water used by his family. Verify his claim. Remember that in 2.2, remember that they said they are going to split in the ratio 2:3. Now the thing that I'm to that I left out when I did the rate and ratio is only one thing. Time you are going to add the ratio. We are not going to add the ratio, we are going to multiply or divide when we move away from 1 or towards 1. So, but in this case, because plus 3, it's 5. Remember, just to add that, it's 5 into 1 mark. 2 plus 3. Now, Sihle, the Sihle's household, remunerated house, Sihle and Paul, remember that it's important to know Sihle is going to pay how much, Pule is going to pay how much. Sihle is going to pay the way they wrote them in the question paper. They started with Sihle. That means Sihle is 2 parts of the account and Pule is 3 parts of the account. That's how they're going to split. So Sihle is the one that is claiming. So we need to calculate how much is Sihle's family is going to pay. So that means we need 2 parts of 5. How much is going to be? So we say 2 out of 5. Multiply by the total. So we make that as a fraction 2 out of 5. We don't multiply by 100 because we don't need the percentage this time. We need how much Sihle's family is going to pay. So we multiply by the total account which is 766 rand 92 cents. So how much Sihle is going to pay? So multiply by 2 out of 5. So Sihle's family is going to pay 306 rand, 768, which is approximately 306 rand and 77 cents. So Sihle's claim is incorrect because she said that they are going to pay less than 300 rand. So we got 306 rand. That is more than 300 rand. So that means her claim is incorrect. Remember that to write a conclusion is also a mark. It's very important to remember that if you are given about the claims or to verify your claim or to calculate with reasons, you must always at the end of your answer give a reason why you're saying they are correct or incorrect. So for water tariffs for now, I have that. Do I have any question furthermore? Or
ha jwale ha ona dipotso empa re ke bona 072 839 0427 072 839 0427 ntoma metse Hope FM 103 connecting communities re etsa pampiri ke paper 2 ya Maths Lit ke yona re etsa ha ona le dipotso o ka nna ba di romela ka kwano ka 072 839 0427.
Thank you, Date. Ke Maths Lit paper 1 and paper 2 ntate ke di thakela di le pedi ka
oh di thakela di pedi ke tse pedi wena mamedi wa 839 0427 ha ona le potso metsotsong e le shome setseng ha ona le potso romela potso wa hao re tla botsa menere ka kwano a re thuse ka yona ha ona le potso e romela ka kwano.
Thank you Mzukulu. Ke a leboha ke tshepa go ntse le nkutlwa mono mahae mo le dutseng teng and ke hope ntse le nka notes. Don't hesitate go araba any question. To botsa any question ke tlabe ke le mona hape lo sa no tla araba those questions, but ka baka la go sentse ke na metso e mmalwanyana. I think ke na go le re tsetle that little bit part ya probability. Yes, now I want us to tackle probability a little bit. Now remember that in the first part when I calculate probability. In terms of the probability question paper in both paper 1 paper 2, the question are very clear exactly what's expected. But let me start saying trying to understand the probability itself. Now remember, the question can say give the probability, give the possible outcomes, give what are the chances, what are the possibilities. We are still talking about probability. If you hear the word of chance, possibility, probability is one and the same concept. We need to understand what is required of us to answer. Now I'm going to start again from the beginning when we talk about probability. Now how do we find probability? Now probability, remember that if the question is asked probability, every time we say into what is being required, and remember this probability is only for one event. When I'm talking about one event, I'm looking only at that thing. That means I'm looking only at the match, or one coin or one dice. Then we are talking, those are one event. But if we bring to a match and a coin, those are two different events. So that means I'm going to look probability only at one event. Now, if you understand the one event, it's easier to understand two or more events. Now, probability in one event. Remember that the question paper must be specific. What is being required? Required outcome. There must be required outcome. Then over the total number of outcomes. Then we are talking about probability. Now, let's make an example of what I'm talking about. If we have a coin and we had to flip a coin, we flip the coin with the hope that, or with the possible that it will land on what we expected. So that one is likely that it may land on head or tail because it has only two outcomes. So if I had to flip a coin with Tatem Timkul, I will say Tatem Timkul pick a side, and he says I pick a head. That means the probability of Tatem Timkul, he requires a head in order to win that challenge. So that means the required event is head. In a coin, we only have one head. We don't have two heads, unfortunately, because coin has only two sides. So the required outcome is head, which is 1. So that means if I have to calculate the probability of Tatem, it will be 1. The total outcome, how many outcomes are there? Because it's not only head in that coin, there's also tail. So that means I have two possible outcomes that I can get out of that coin. So that means the total outcomes, I count the number of outcomes, which is 2, which is 1 over 2. So the question paper will be specific which outcome is being expected, divided by the total number of outcomes in that. So that means in this case, it will be 1 over 2 as a fraction. Now, or a dice has six outcomes. So we can ask so many things about the dice because a dice is also one event. A dice, I can say, what's the probability of us, if I roll the dice, then it lands on an even number. Even number is very important that you know what are even numbers and odd numbers. Even numbers are those multiples of 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Those are even numbers. But if I talk about odd numbers, there are those numbers and so forth. Those are odd numbers. Now, if they say the probability of getting in even numbers, now we need to calculate even numbers on a dice. That means it's 2, 4, and 6. Unfortunately, dice has only 6 sides. That means there are 3 possible outcomes. That means it's 3 because they require an even number. So even numbers, there are 3 there. But there are not only 3 sides. The total outcomes there, it will be how many? 6. Remember that if you write probability fraction, you need to write this as a simplified fraction. So as a simplified fraction, it will also be 1 over 2. Now, but probability, before I go to that, Ntate Mkhutulu has the questions.
Hona le momamedi a rometseng ka kwano mona ka 0728390427 potso ya hae ka mona e re fela, hi, can you please ask sir to please clarify how do we calculate VAT exclusive and VAT inclusive? Ke yona potso eo.
Okay, Ntate Mkhutulu. That one I remember I did it previously when we started the sessions, which is also important, especially when we calculate the water tariffs. In this example that I did, I'm aware that the VAT was not included there. But remember that when we talk about VAT inclusive and VAT exclusive, remember it's very important that what kind of amount is being given. Now let's say last time that I did an example with the Coca-Cola, which is 22 rand. Remember that it must be specific whether VAT is inclusive or VAT is exclusive. So if we go to the shops, especially when we buy our groceries, all the items are VAT inclusive. So if it's VAT inclusive, you know our question paper immonate, because it always give you a clear indication that you must remember that whether VAT is inclusive or exclusive, because they will say calculate the price excluding VAT. Immediately say the price excluding VAT. That means the price that they give it to you, it already includes VAT. So that means if that price includes VAT, like the price of Coca-Cola, which is 22 rand for now, that means 22 rand, we are not going to use the 15% that we are used to. We are going to use, because that price includes VAT, that means is the original price of the Coca-Cola plus the 15% of VAT. That means the original price 100% Makoya, which is 100%, plus 15, which is 115. That means the 2 rand is 115%. It's not 100%, it's not 15%. So we are going to divide, because it's VAT inclusive, divide by 115%. So every time when it's VAT inclusive, you divide by 115%. If the price is VAT exclusive, we multiply by 15%. So that means for the first one, if we divide by 115%, the answer that we're going to get is price including VAT. Then for this example, 22 divided by 115%, we get 19 rand 13 cents. This is the price excluding VAT, it's not VAT. But if 22 rand was not including VAT, we are going to say 22 multiply, because it's not, VAT is not included, multiply by 15%. That means we multiply by 15%, which is 3 rand 30 cents. So that answer there, 3 rand 30, is VAT. Those two examples are not the same. If it's VAT inclusive, we divide by 150%. If it's VAT exclusive, we multiply by 15%. So it's either we multiply by 15% or divide by 115%. But if we are given VAT, we are doing vice versa. Where we divided, we multiply by 115. Where we multiply by 15%, we divide by 15%. I don't know that I be arabile momame.
Ke tshepa gore mo arabile ntate wa ka re ke bona hape e hona le engwe potso ba re fela evening, how do we calculate taxable income?
Taxable incomes, remember that we have to have the income before we find the taxable income. Now remember, the taxable income is per annum. If your income, in most of the cases, the people who are earning salary, they get payslip, and payslip is per month. Remember that I said that your taxable income, it will depend on your 13th check or not. If we have the 13th check, is when we have the bonuses, or that means in that month of your birthday, in most of the cases, we get double pay. Then that is the 13th check. Then we multiply the monthly salary by 13. But if we don't have the 13th check, we multiply by 12. That means it's normal one. But remember that the question must be specific. The example that we did last time, the question must be specific. Whether on the 13th check, whether the pension fund is already we are already taking out also the pension fund on the 13th check. Are we paying tax on that one or not? So that means it will depend. Now, after multiplying by 12, take out your pension fund also annually. So after taking out the pension fund from your income per annum, and you're separating your pension fund per annum, if we separate those two, now that income is no longer called income. After taking out the pension fund, is called a taxable income. You understand?
ya o qetela ntate tla be sentse fela re tlo suthela Mr EK Nkumbi tla be sentse re tlisetsa mathematics ya o qetela potso fela ba re fela hi so kopa ho botsa di textbook tsa rona di revete ke 14 and no ke 15 so exam ke revete ke 14 or ke wrong.
Remember, learners, it depends on an examiner. If the examiner used the items that was into maybe 2014, 2015, it will be 14%. But if you use the current items, it will be 15%. Now, for now, in a textbook, use what is given. In a question paper, use what is given. But VAT from 2018 is 15%. Before that, it was 14%, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. Which of our current textbooks now is because they were there before 2018. So that means the schools have not upgraded yet. So that means for textbooks we'll use 14%, but when we use in the question paper and the question paper says 15% VAT is calculated, we use 15%. We don't use 14%.
Ai ke tshepa ba utlwile menere ne sentse ele Mr LGP Matitoane ya hlanka maneka Twilling Combined School wena mamedi wa ka ke yena na sentse re tlisetsa pampiri ena ya tsena tse pedi tsena tsa Maths Lit le paper 1 le paper 2 re tla bona le ntate hape tlo tla re etela ke tshepa gore potso tsa lona tse leng ha di a gona ho fitlela ho nta le ka di save fela mohlang a tlang hape re tla be sentse le mofa rona dipotso tseo tatwa ka re a leboa bantsa wa o qatela
ke la bulendete Mkhumbulo and learners ke re enjoy ba mona as teachers spending time with you. Please enjoy each sessions. Ntate ke leboa for maths for now ntate ke leboa.
Thank you. Wana mabedi wa ka ke tshepa go fela o enjoy le paper 1 le paper 2 tseno sentse o di tlisetswa ke Mr LGP Matitoane wana mabedi wa ka ka kwano ka 103 Hope FM connecting communities
103